Welcome back to another ZX Spectrum compilation chart challenge. I'd normally start with a look at my physical compilation collection first and look at how that's grown, but I'm going to change it up this episode and come back to that a little later. So without further ado, let's get on with the review. This time we're having a look at a budget title from Codemasters' extensive Quattro range of compilations. The Quattro range was launched by Codemasters in 1990. Over the course of 3 years, 14 unique collections were released. Retailing at either $2.99 or $3.99 depending on the quality and popularity of the included games, Quattro was a way of prolonging the lifespan of older Codemasters releases, with all the titles included having been published on the label before. Today we're going to look at Quattro Sports, which was one of the first batch of Quattro games to be released back in 1990. All of the games were previously released on the Codemasters label in 1987 for the price of £1.99 each. So to get all four for just $2.99 seems like a pretty good deal. So let's take a look. Okay, here we go with Quattro Sports. This is actually the third time I've recorded this. The first time I didn't put my microphone on, and the second time the microphone ran out of battery halfway through. So let's hope I get through this one. So this is Quattro Sports. You will see when we review more Quattro games that it's absolutely uniform, the packaging. It's the same across all of the Quattro range. There are 14 Spectrum ones as far as I'm aware. I do own 10 of them, so them being uniform, they look great stacked up together on the shelf. So I'm a fan of that kind of packaging, and not the ones that do half of them in one size, then move up to a double jewel, and then they'll change to a big box, and then they'll go back to a single. That really does my head in. So I'm quite pleased with the way Codemasters have managed these. So that's the cover. It's got these nice hand-drawn images of all the games. I don't know who does the artwork for Codemasters, but I am a fan of those nice hand-drawn images of each. Although I don't really like the Pro Ski one for some reason. I don't know what bothers me about that, but the other three I really love. So let's have a look at the rest of the case. On the back we get screenshots of each of the games. They are multi-format, so not necessarily Spectrum game screens. I think the Snooker is the Spectrum screen, but the others aren't. And then we'll get some information down the side, which is usually just magazine reviews or lies made up by Codemasters to try and sell the game. On this one, it's all from magazines. We've got Amstrad User giving 20 out of 20 to Grand Prix Simulator. And then the only one of the review snippets that's for the Spectrum is from Crash, talking about Pro Ski Simulator, and it said the simulation is so good, it's just like being on the slopes. So we'll get to that and validate that a little bit later on. We'll have a look inside now. Firstly, the cassette looks very nice. It's these lovely clear cassettes with white printed information. You've got the name of the two games that are on that side there, the other two games on the other side. We've got a nice little Codemasters logo. Yeah, I think these are lovely, these with the explosion effect around the cassette as well. I think that's really nice, and it goes so well with the rest of the packaging. So I think they've done, design-wise, a really good job, Codemasters, for these. Looking at the inlay, we've seen the front and back. We fold that out and we get 3 more pages in colour. The first one is more praise for each of the games. It doesn't give you any information on them. It's just telling you how great each of them are, using the word brilliant many times. And then we have 2 adverts for 2 other Quattro games. We've got Quattro Power and Quattro Adventure. So 2 very different titles compared to what we've got now, although Quattro Power, probably 2 of the games that are on Quattro Sports could have fit onto Quattro Power, based on the fact that they're doing Rallycross Simulator, Pro Powerboat Simulator, Motocross. They're all sports, so you know there's a bit of crossover there. And there were quite a few duplicates across the Quattro range, where some games appeared on 2 and even 3 different compilations in the Quattro range, which is a bit of a cheat, but there you go. Flip it over, and we've got over here, we've got the loading instructions and keys for most of the games. I think most of the games, or 3 of the games, are redefinable keys anyway, or joysticks, so that's all good. But Pro Snooker Simulator has got a lot of keys, so it's got a separate page dedicated to that and some information on how to play the game, which when we get to you'll understand why that is absolutely needed. Then we have the Codemasters helpline if you want to spend 38p a minute to find out how to get past a certain level in Dizzy, then knock yourself out. I'm not sure if they're still manned now. I don't even think 0898 numbers work anymore. But anyway, 38p a minute back in 1990 was a lot of money. So you wouldn't have caught me ringing one of those lines. And then finally, we have this little, very little, and hidden away under the back cover, credits for the authors of the games. So BMX Simulator was Tim Miller, obviously designed by Richard Darling, but coded by Tim Miller. Grand Prix Simulator by the Oliver Twins, Pro Ski Simulator also by the Oliver Twins, and Pro Snooker Simulator by Godwin Graham. So it's nice that they put it in there. It's a little bit hidden away, but it's nice that it's in there. The little bit of credit to the creators. So that is Quattro Sports. It's a really nice package. Like I say, I love the uniformity of these, and I think they look great on the shelf when you've got a few of them. So yeah, I'm a fan of the design of these packages. So let's have a look and see what the games are like. BMX Simulator was the first game that was released under the Codemasters brand, and it was devised by Codemasters co-owner Richard Darling, who coded the original C64 version. The Spectrum conversion was done by Tim Miller. Other than a switch from brown dirt on the C64 to green grass on the Specky, the game's conversion is very faithful, and contains some really funky title screen music that puts me in mind of the old Morecambe and Wise skit. They're playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. Despite mixed reviews at the time, the game was a big commercial hit, and I remember picking up a copy from Boots at some point in 1987 and spent many a long night playing the game. But more than 30 years have passed since then, so let's have a look and see if I still have the same love for the game. The simple premise is to race your bike around the 3 laps of the track within the predefined time limit, and beating your opponent will boost your score. Fail to complete the course in time and it's game over. Succeed and you move on to the next of the game's 7 levels. You can play against the computer, but of course the most fun is when you get a mate round and compete against each other. The controls couldn't be simpler, just left, right and pedal. But the difficulty comes from the deviously placed obstacles and also from the speed boost that comes from the banked turns. And in a genius move, Dickie Darling also added a slow-mo replay option so that you can relive those epic faceplants or majestic wins. Level 1 is a fairly sedate oval track, but from level 2 onwards things get much more twisty-turny. You also have to contend with the other riders who will knock you off your bike if they pass through you from behind. This can be absolutely infuriating and is generally a tactic that the computer-controlled rider likes to employ. The graphics, whilst mostly black and green, do have some nice flashes of colour, like the roof of the hot dog seller's van and the straw-coloured starting ramps. And everything is nicely drawn from a bird's eye perspective. Player characters are a little nondescript, with the only difference being the helmet colour, but nothing is less than functional and most is well above that. I've really enjoyed getting reacquainted with BMX Simulator and would love to play a few more games as multiplayer. For a simple but fantastic fun game, at a very low price, BMX Simulator was a huge success for Codemasters, and though the magazines of the day gave fairly middling reviews, I loved the game, and my recent time replaying have shown me that I still do, and I'm going to give BMX Simulator 7 out of 10. And just to illustrate how infuriating the game can be, just look at how close I got to finishing this course in the 45 seconds allotted. Following quickly after BMX Simulator was Grand Prix Simulator, and it bears more than a passing resemblance, but it'd be unfair to call it a copy, as the gameplay is significantly different. It was written by the Oliver twins, who would become long-time partners of Codemasters, working on over 30 games, before repeating pretty much what the Darlings had done to Mastertronic in cashing in the chips to start their own software house. Releasing a month before Electric Dream's official license of Atari's arcade hit Super Sprint, the inspiration is as obvious as Donald Trump's fake tan. And I'd be surprised if Cody's didn't get a strongly worded letter from their solicitors, which of course if they did, they must have ignored.
3, 2, 1, go!
In similar style to BMX Simulator, this is a race across 3 laps of 14 different tracks, with the aim of beating the computer control rival. A second player can also join the fun, but Mr. Bot will still be there, setting the pace and more often than not, beating you to the checkered flag. Graphics are nicely presented, with 2 well-drawn F1 cars at the top straddling the score display and traffic light stop-go symbols. The design of the cars immediately dates the game, as we see the long retired colours of the Marlboro McLaren next to a traditional red Ferrari. The track is as well drawn as you could expect, with colours used sparingly for barriers, obstructions and scenery detail. The cars, however, are minuscule and not particularly well defined, but before you complain, I'd suggest taking a quick look at the cars in the Commodore 64 version, which are just oblongs with no wheels at all. Telling the 3 cars apart on the Specky can be difficult, as they're all identical apart from a black dot on 2 of them. Player 1's car is all white, Player 2 has a large black dot, and Player 3, the computer car, has a small dot. Though to be fair, once you've set off, you have no reason to be looking around, so I've never lost track of which car is mine. What is difficult is the handling, as Grand Prix Simulator is a drift racer, and the cars slip and slide like a toddler on an ice rink. Once you get the hang of controlling the drifts, the game really opens up, as you anticipate the turns early and glide around the apex. Hazards like water, or is it oil, will spin your car, but you usually end up facing in the right direction again, so it's no biggie.
Car 1, position 1, car 2 is out. 3, 2, 1, go!
But the worst hazard by far is the tunnel. If you head into the tunnel on an angle, it's easy to get stuck in there, not knowing which way you're facing or which way to turn to correct yourself. And one big change from BMX Simulator is that this is now a straight race. Fail to beat your opponent and you'll be out. With some really nice presentation, from the excellent loading screen and fantastic David Whittaker drum and bass theme, to the clear sampled speech, the only real disappointment is the complete lack of in-game sound. Not even the monotonous drone of a car engine. But Grand Prix Simulator was an excellent addition to the Simulator series, and a fine follow-up to BMX Simulator, and I'm going to give it 7 out of 10.
Car 1 is out. Game over.
Before we move on to the final 2 games in Quattro Sports, I wanted to give a quick update on the Compilation ZX website, and also my physical collection of Spectrum compilations. Since I first showed some early screens in episode 2, compilationsZX.com has had quite an extensive overhaul, and lots more content has been added to the articles section, including a look at whether Ocean's claim that they sold 1 million was genuine, stats around the most popular games and most prolific publishers, and also a feature on the Quattro series as a whole. But the main change is in the CompZXDB, our database of Spectrum compilation releases. Gone is the bespoke database I was managing, and in its place a brand new repository that's fully integrated with ZXDB, the awesome open database that powers all the best Specky sites like WOZ, Spectrum Computing and ZX Art. CompZXDB now lists every Spectrum compilation. It's fully searchable and each entry contains information such as price, release year, games included, download availability and where possible images of the inlay, in-game screens and magazine advertisements, as well as a link to the Spectrum Computing page for more info and downloads. There are also some handy quick filters at the top that let you jump between specific publishers like Ocean, Elite, US Gold and Codemasters. The other options available are to view all the items that ZXDB list as missing in action, those that have been reviewed on this show, and a page of stats regarding the full database as well as the league tables for this series. Finally, there's an option to view the physical archive. That's my collection of compilations, which you'll see has now grown to 114. My purchases will certainly slow down from now on, and in future episodes I'll most likely just update on any notable pickups rather than the collection as a whole. CompilationZX.com was principally set up for myself to track my collection and allow me to put my thoughts on Spectrum compilations down in virtual ink, but I really hope it's of use or interest to others, so please take a look and let me know what you think. Another game developed by the Oliver twins, Professional Ski Simulator, is both the same and different to the two other simulators I've just reviewed. Still a race against time and an opponent, which can be human or computer controlled, and it still features very small graphics. But this time we have an isometric viewpoint and some clever shading techniques used to show the various gradients of the slopes, which basically means the more dots in the shading, the greater the gradient, so the faster you'll travel. The graphics are really good and do give a great sense of being on piste. The techno music that greets you on the menu screen is also of a high standard and gives credence to the Codemasters' claim that they wanted to give full price quality at a budget price point. The music unfortunately only runs on the menu, but I've kept it in the background here to add a bit of ambience. The gameplay is once again very easy to learn, but an absolute beast to master. Firstly, the controls are rotational, which is pretty standard for these early simulator games, but as we're racing downhill and the controls are from the skier's perspective, they're reversed. It doesn't take too long to get to grips with it, but it is initially off-putting. Your task is to ski down the 7 slopes, avoiding the obstacles such as trees, snow mounds, huts, fences, and all manner of other scenery. You must ensure that you pass through every set of flags on your way. Miss a single one and you'll be disqualified. You don't need to win the race though to qualify for the next round, just beat the qualifying time, so you're probably best ignoring your opposition and taking it a little bit steady as to not crash, because the screen will continue to scroll without you, and if it passes you, you'll have the almost impossible task of navigating the course using just the map on the right hand side. Pro Ski Simulator is a tough game, but it's also great fun, and as with the other 2 games I've reviewed in this package, I would love to play it against a real opponent and not just the computer. But even as a one player, it is deserving of 7 out of 10. Professional Snooker Simulator is the odd one out in this package, given that it's actually a simulator and not just an arcade representation of the sport. Developed by Godwin Graham, this is a serious attempt to translate the sport to the humble Spectrum, with realistic geometry, the full rulebook, and authentic shot mechanics. 3 years on since CDS released Steve Davis Snooker, and we still hadn't had a snooker game to rival it. Unless, of course, you count 1986's Tournament Snooker, that was released on Anirog's short-lived label Magnificent 7 Software. Because Tournament Snooker was reloaded a year later by Cody's and sold as Professional Snooker Simulator. Comparing Pro Snooker Sim to the Steve Davis game is probably a little unfair, however. The Crosshairs control of Steve Davis Snooker was a far more arcadey approach than our mate Godric took, and was played on a table that far more resembled a game of pool. Pro Snooker eschews all that arcade nonsense and sets itself firmly in the simulation camp. Forget all that fun business, this is going to be realistic. And you know what? I've really got to hand it to him. Despite the limitations of a system with only 48K, a system, of course, with no colour brown, what he has delivered is some kind of crazy wizardry. However, all that realism comes at a cost, and that cost is the ease of play. The game uses up to 20 keys, and a budget game is never going to include a keyboard overlay, so get used to checking the key chart every few shots. To take a shot, you must move your cue into position by rotating around the cue ball until the ball is between your cue and your target. You can then use the fine control keys to ensure that your angles are right. To help you, in the top left, you get a player's eye view of the white and the ball you are targeting. Use this to judge the angle the ball will take after being struck, and it's all plain sailing. Well, not really, as the game is seriously difficult. You do get to apply spin and control the power of the shot, but it's going to take some serious practice to master the game. And on that note, there is a practice mode that means you can pick balls up and place them wherever you want, retake shots, etc., or even line up some trick shots. But apart from that, the presentation is bare bones. No loading screen, no title screen, no music, just some blippy farty noises for the balls being struck. Worse though, the game's 2-player only. When playing Pro Snooker Sim, I often found myself marvelling at the technical wizardry far more than the actual fun of the game, and I do think that the lack of an AI opponent is a bit of a killer blow. But even with marks off for that, Pro Snooker still comes away with 6 points. And one last word on the game. If you've got 17 minutes spare, head over to the game's page on Spectrum Computing and have a look at the video of someone hitting a 147 break in the game. It's a truly wondrous sight. So that's your lot for Quattro Sports, a package I had a lot of fun with. I'd played 3 of the games before back in the day, so I knew what I was getting, but there's no doubt that if I'd paid £3 for the pack back in 1990, I'd have been a very happy chappy. Before we look at the scores, let's see what the Spectrum magazines thought, starting with issue 58 of Your Sinclair, who said BMX Sim was top notch, Grand Prix Sim was a super sprint rip-off but squillions better, they found Pro Ski Sim playable but boring, and Pro Snooker to be a little bit crap. They end the review with a rating of 88 degrees. One other thing I noticed on this YS page was that they also rated Quattro Adventure and scored it a whopping 95 degrees, which I assume means it's really good or really hot. I'll add that to the pad for a future review. Crash did a roundup of the Quattro packs about 6 months later in issue 91 and said that Sports is probably one of the best packs, calling Grand Prix Sim a well-playable overhead super sprint effort, Pro Ski an addictive ski game, Pro Snooker one of the best snooker sims around, and proclaiming that you'll already have played BMX Sim as it's on the Codemasters cover mount tape in that very issue. They round it off with 86% and a hurrah. Once again, another review on that page caught my eye, where Ocean's Power Up collection scored 90% and a crash smash. I don't have a copy of that compilation yet, but I'll certainly keep an eye out for it. And while we're on the subject of reviews, if you're of the beige persuasion, then retro reviewer and all-round nice guy Matt Witchfinder reviewed Quattro Sports a couple of years ago on his own Commodore 64 compilation comparison video series. I won't spoil things by telling you what he thought, so check out his video to find out. On to my scores now, and the game scored fairly well, with 3 7s and a 6, so that gives an average of 6.75. The packaging I really liked, with the clean layout, nice artwork and clear cassette, though it's only a single dual cassette, so that kind of packaging has a lower ceiling, but Quattro Sports still receives 7 points. With a total of 27 points and a retail price of £2.99, that works out at 11 pence per point, which scores 9 points for value. And after typing print 1 plus int RND star 100 into the specky, we see that Quattro Sports gets an overall score of 71%, which is enough to become the 3rd recipient of the ZXCCC Mega Pack Award. So where does that put Quattro Sports in the league tables, I hear you ask? It jumps straight into top spot on the budget chart, well ahead of the only other budget title I've reviewed. It also sits pretty in 2nd place on the overall chart, above Now Games, but way behind the leader, Arcade Force 4. In the Constructors' Championship, it's a similar story, with Codemasters the meat in a US Gold and Virgin Games sandwich. As usual, you can see links to all the wonderful resources I've used in making this series, and have another listen to this week's excellent featured music. And stick around for the post-credit scenes, where Cassette 50 also gets sporty. Welcome back. Here we go with another Cassette 50 mini review, and in keeping with the episode's sports theme, the game today is basketball. It's another anonymous title, but with it being placed 3rd on the A side of the tape, there's a good chance a few of you have already played it. So let's have a look. As this really ugly screen tells you, basketball is a game for 2 players. Blue uses keys 1, 2 and 3, and red uses 8, 9 and 0. After a shot, possession will change to the other player, and a foul's committed if you're standing on your opponent when you shoot. I'm not sure why this screen couldn't be all black, rather than the weird white bits all over the place, but let's skip over that and see how it plays. A very long high-pitched note announces the title, and then we see our squat players hovering above the ground, looking more like orangutans. The baskets are 5 times the height of the players, so we're certainly not looking at a regulation court. and you must move your character left and right and chuck the ball at the basket. The distance the ball travels seems to be random, but manage to get it in and you get a little dance and music that repeats once or twice too many times. You can see the ambition of the coder, and I think they probably worked hard for the 10 quid that Cascade paid them. But there's one major flaw that stops this game from being playable. Despite being 2-player only, the system only recognises one key press at a time. So whenever your opponent presses their key, you're locked out. If that had been fixed, you could have at least had a bit of fun from trying to stay close to the opposition so they can't shoot, as it would be a foul if the 2 players are touching. But as it is, there's just no fun to be had. So it only scores 1 point.